Queensland, where the State Public Service is introducing what's called cultural safety as a new directive that abolishes merit-based appointments. Instead, departmental and agency heads will have been told to, quote, ensure that recruitment processes are conducted in a culturally safe way. Now, in other words, bad references or a history of disciplinary action, such as being fired from your old job, will now be handled differently on cultural grounds, with special mention made in reports of Indigenous applicants. Remember, these are jobs you're paying for. These are taxpayer-funded jobs in the public service. To discuss this now, I'm joined by LNP Senator for Queensland, James McGrath, and a Senior Fellow at the Institute of Public Affairs, John Roskam. Gents, welcome. Well, James, as I said, you're a Queensland Senator. What's your reaction to this?
Oh, my reaction is the same as the taxpayers of Queensland. The taxpayers of Queensland want a public service that is appointed on merit. They want to ensure that their doctors and their nurses and their ambos and their fireys are people appointed on merit, not because someone is ticking a box in a high-rise somewhere. This just shows that Labor in Queensland don't have the right priorities for Queensland, and it's selling the taxpayer short, but it's also selling all of Queensland short.
Yeah, but as I read that there, John Roskam, if you tick the box to say you're Indigenous and they do a reference check and they find that your previous employer says, oh, mate, don't touch him, he's been sacked more times than I've had a hot dinner, you're sort of bound to take him under this new cultural directive, aren't you? And don't we want a public service that's actually getting the stuff done that we pay them to do, not identity politics?
We do, Peter, and we want what the Senator just outlined. Less than a month ago, Australians voted on this sort of woke identity politics, and as Australians we overwhelmingly rejected regarding people as simply a product of their background or skin colour or something else. And this reveals that the identity politics program of the left has to be understood and has to be opposed and has to be revealed as a process that goes a long way beyond the voice referendum. And regardless of what Australians decided, we're still going to get governments around the country still doing this until we stand up and say no.
James, I spoke last night to former Chief of Army General Lay. He was concerned that we're not as defence ready as we should be in Australia, both in terms of kit and personnel. But I see that story today that Defence Department is now won't use the term unmanned drones. I think they're calling them uncrewed drones because they're all concerned about gender language in defence. How about they just get us ready to fight a war?
It doesn't. And the men and women who I speak to in our armed forces, they don't care about the sexist language or whether a drone is a boy or a girl. They don't care about that. They just want good kit. They just want to get the kit so they can do their jobs properly. They don't care about the names. And this just shows that Defence has the wrong priorities under Labor. It just shows that they're more concerned about being PC and about being woke than looking after the men and women who go into battle so we can sleep safely in our beds at night. This just shows that Miles is not on top of his portfolio.
Oh, it certainly shows that. I mean, it is a concern at the moment, particularly in defence, but right across the ministerial board. Let's go to Victoria. That's where you live, John Roskam. Mary Beck Council was the Moreland Council until they went woke as well. They're going to move a motion tonight in relation to Gaza, pretty much going after Israel, dehumanising Palestinians. They say that's what Israel is doing to justify war crimes, and I quote them there. And they want the Australian government, the federal government, to end all military, economic, political and diplomatic ties with the state of Israel, blah, 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 blah. I mean, this is a local council. What on earth is it doing debating any motion to do with the Commonwealth government and not stick to its knitting?
That's right, Peter, but there's something for me bigger than this. It reveals that the moral relativism, the idea that we can't separate good from evil, has permeated through all of our institutions, whether it's the woke language in the Defence Forces, as you've just been talking about, whether it is local councils siding with terrorists. This reveals we have a very deep problem through all walks of our institutions and society, and it is much worse than just a few local politicians grandstanding. It reveals something much deeper about Australia.
James, they used to call Rudd Kevin 747 because he loved the pointy end of the plane. He had to be overseas in every sort of international dogfight. He's now been bested by the current Prime Minister, who at the moment, as I said, is in the Cook Islands. He'll come home and then he's off to San Francisco. 2 weeks of Parliament left. Australians absolutely doing it tough. A whole lot of really significant domestic issues on his desk. And he's not sitting at his desk long enough to sort any of them out. I made the point before, pollsters are saying this is really turning up now, unprompted, in the focus groups. What's your sense of it?
Oh, Airbus Albo, that's what people are calling him in Queensland. I'm getting emails and text messages from people saying, isn't it great that our Prime Minister actually might spend some time in Australia? It shows this guy doesn't have the right priorities because he's still burnt and hurt by what happened with the voice referendum. He doesn't understand about cost of living. So, of course, he's going to go overseas and be on the cocktail circuit because that's where he feels comfortable. But even then, he's not up to the job of representing Australia properly. We need a Prime Minister and a government who are dealing with cost of living, which has been the number one issue in Australia for the last 16 months. We had another interest rate rise yesterday. That's 12 on Labor's watch. But where's Albo? Overseas. Where's Albo next week? Overseas. He's just not up to the job.
James makes a point there about cost of living, and I have to say the Prime Minister doesn't buy his own groceries, doesn't put fuel in his own car, doesn't pay his power bill. I think as is proper, we put them in residences here and in Sydney, or Canberra and Sydney, but he's absolutely out of touch. John Roskam, James McGrath, thank you both for your time.